Now, if you like this, please, again, hit subscribe, like, comment if you have any questions. Let's dive into the last bit here. If we are running our ads and Facebook is a machine learning platform, what are we teaching it and how does it work? Well, the honest truth is Facebook is a machine learning platform, which means that what we invest, every impression, every penny, euro, rand that we spend, ultimately is giving the system data. And that data is what makes all of the decisions for us. Facebook looks at what's happened and then tries to find other ways of repeating that or making it better for the end user. And that's the biggest thing here. Facebook isn't aligned against you. And that's what I hear a lot of time. People say, well, it just feels like the machine doesn't want me to win. And that's 100% objectively false. But when you're not aligning yourself towards the success of the machine, don't be surprised when it doesn't work well for you. And if you give an employee a bad set of instructions and you tell it to make really bad choices and your business fails, don't be mad at the employee for something that is squarely your fault. So that being said, the data that we get is extremely valuable. So when we run creative testing with a lot of post IDs and a lot of different ads and a lot of different ad sets at very low budgets, we have to remember our level of confidence in the outcome of any of those tests is extremely negligible. If you are spending 20 bucks, 50 bucks against 4, 5, 10 different post IDs, and you're hoping to make sure that each one gets a decent amount of chance of where we're going to spend, great. Here's the problem. None of those things are actually getting enough budget for you to understand whether the success they had was luck or merited and repeatable. Now, you might be saying, well, I've been doing this for a long time and that's the way it works. Great. You've been doing a C+ or B- job for a long time, and maybe that you were successful with that. But imagine what it would look like if you were doing it properly and you were able to scale your business with confidence and success with stable and projectable outcomes on less and less work. Now, before we talked about if you had 20 creatives that you wanted to run. Now, if you have 20 creatives and we're using that 3-2-2 method talked about earlier, and you are having trouble because you only run 3 instead of 20, you can run 3 of them and then launch the next test of the next 3 and then the next 3. And what you're doing is instead of spending across 20 ideas at once, you're spending across a couple of ideas at a time. And you're making sure that only the best ideas of those little batches get all of the spend. So you're spending the majority of your money giving Facebook the highest quality data in a very high volume to let you understand whether or not you're meeting the business needs of Facebook, and if when you do meet their business needs, if that's good for you. Which ultimately brings us down to the very last thing here. Ads do the targeting. This is not up for debate. This is objectively true. Every ad is actually a post ID. That post ID is actually a web page. Facebook is measuring the click-through rate, the bounce rate, the stickiness, everything on every web page. And they're ultimately measuring for CRO. They're ultimately measuring for time on site. They're trying to make sure that any user that sees this content is more likely to come back to the page or spend longer on-site the platform, in the app, or on the site. And what that means is when somebody comes to your web page and they do well and they give a response that Facebook deems is valuable, let's say you get 1,000 of them and 500 responded positively and 500 responded poorly. Who do you think is going to see that next 1,000 impressions? Facebook is going to say, well, these 500 people responded well. I'm going to find 500 or 1,000 people that more look like that look like those people, that behave like those people. Because the ad, just like our organic content, is creating its own audience. Every ad makes its own lookalike audience of people that respond positively to it. Now, when you use a targeting audience, a lookalike or an interest group or something like that, what you're doing is saying, I want you to force my ads onto this audience. And you're saying, regardless of who actually wants to see it, regardless of where this ad might actually be delivering a good result, regardless of where I'm going to actually be a good business partner to Facebook and I'm going to get projectable and desirable and scalable outcomes with high confidence, I want you instead to go focus your ads on this spot. And I'm going to pay more money to do that, which ultimately, again, makes your advertiser score worse because the majority of that budget is going towards people that probably don't want to see your ad. What is the overlap of the ad's own lookalike audience and the audience that you've chosen? What happens when you place 3 or 4 of those ads inside of one ad set? Now there's a Venn diagram of where all of those ads want to go. And what is the overlap of that and the audience that you've picked? Is that audience large enough for you to scale? And what I hear most often, people say, well, my lookalike is doing them my broad, so I'm just going to run a lookalike. Yeah, it will, because it's only a small section. And when you use it in tandem with broad, that's great. But remember, what you're doing is you're ultimately saying, here's an existing set of data, and I want to only focus my ads on the people who, based on existing sets of data, are likely to respond well, regardless of who my ads are actually being shown to. And what you're doing is when you run that alongside broad, and then you say, well, lookalikes outperform, what you're doing is you're saying, when I cherry pick my result to get a short win today, while making my advertising costs long-term less desirable, and I'm reducing my advertiser score, and I'm hurting the estimated action rate of every single ad by forcing experiences onto people that they don't want to have, and I'm impeding Facebook's ability to deliver people positive experiences because I'm not interested in being a good business partner, ultimately, success gets more and more difficult. And yes, that means broad won't be as efficient as the lookalike because you're investing more and more money into ultimately cannibalizing the success that you deserve. But if you turned off the retargeting, if you turned off the lookalikes, if you ran creative testing with dynamic creative at broad and only escalated the ads that won, you wouldn't need that lookalike anymore. Because remember, the ads have a lookalike audience. Every ad makes its own audience. And if you scale against only the audience that the ads actually want to appeal to, and you're constantly making better ads that ultimately give you a better desired outcome that's stable and projectable, you can scale your business with extreme confidence, much lower workload, so that you see more success and less stress. Ultimately, that's how you're supposed to do creative testing. At the end of the day, there are a million ways of doing the job, and you can succeed doing the job wrong. But there is an objective truth in how the machine works. There are objective facts, inarguable, on tools designed to help you be better aligned with Facebook. It's your choice whether or not you want to reject how the machine works, to disrespect the end user, and work much harder and then struggle, or if you want to give up a losing battle that ultimately you will lose, and in favor, line yourself up with how the system actually works so that you can be more and more successful moving forward. And that's really the choice that you have. Would you rather do things wrong, but it means you have to work harder and harder, and maybe you can get away with it because your business is so good, or your definition of success isn't actually growth in the business? Or would you say, I don't care what it used to look like, I'm willing to do better and better, scale the growth of my business, the growth of my client, while making myself have to work less and less and give myself greater and greater confidence, and eliminate all of this noise and instability and lack of consistency in my advertising? That's a choice you can make. But ultimately, if you want to do creative testing on Facebook and you're not doing dynamic creative against broad, you are setting yourself up for failure. That is, again, an objective truth, backed by every single data point that we've talked about, and backed up by the engineering and product team. And believe me, I know, I was there at the development of a lot of these tools, and I spent hundreds of millions of dollars trying to prove one way or the other as being right. And every single time that you lean into the machine, you're going to be more successful than trying to cheat it and work harder and harder. You have the choice. Do you want to work and do a good job and ultimately make the outcome of your work better and better so that it's easier and easier to be more and more successful? Or do you want to be right and be smart and ultimately go out of business? Facebook is fun. YouTube is great. They think you might like some of these. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you have any questions or opinions about this, please don't be shy. Ask them below. Hit subscribe. Go to links.facebookdisruptor.com for more resources. You deserve success. I'm glad to be helpful. Until next time, I'll see you on the internet.